motion to accept the meeting minutes of June 5th, November 13th, November 14th, and November 27th, 2017.
I haven't looked through those changes made that we talked about.
Yes, whoever scribbled notes on some meeting minutes, I changed it.
All right, I'll second the motion to approve.
Okay. Discussion, errors, omissions that we need to be aware of? Now, we're all caught up at this point?
No,
Not quite?
no,
Okay.
I gotta fill in some gaps in between some of
Okay.
these minutes.
Okay, okay. Okay. Hearing no discussion, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. I don't see many folks from the public, but do we have any public input that we need to be aware of? Or Kathy or Brad? Or what?
I said I have a lot fun.
Okay. Well, we've got a lot of stuff here to go through, so I'm sure something will... Okay, we have a wage authorization and approval for the senior center director.
Is there discussion?
Yeah, so, just as a. so
Oh, we gotta
right,
approve
I
the
need
salary
two-
first.
Two different votes. One was
Yeah.
to go above the minimum wage, but we did agree upon grade 2 as discussed. And then I just need a formal vote on wage authorization of Charlie Sumner.
Right. Okay, what is the wishes of the board on?
I assume we agreed upon step 2.
Step 2.
Just signing these so I can't make the motion with the right numbers.
That's
Well,
right.
but
Yeah, that's right.
I would make a motion that we
That's,
officially hire Eileen Clarkston as a A4 step 2 at $39,052 annual for a 37.5 hour week.
Okay. That was a motion?
That was a motion.
Second?
I did it all at once if we're allowed to.
Second that.
Okay. Discussion? I think it's pretty well what we talked about last week.
It is.
Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Now we have another vote on this.
just to approve the wage authorization.
Excuse me?
Which is
Which
basically the same one.
I included it in that.
Oh,
so-
okay.
If it has to be separate, we can do it, but I was
I
trying to
think
get
you
them
can do
done.
it, they can do it as one, it's just two different actions that need to be taken. Should we officially be starting tomorrow?
Okay, we have a wage authorization procedure for open for discussion.
So I sent you and also the other departments this draft of a wage authorization procedure, and heard from a couple of people. I have some corrections to make to it. One of them was from the police chief. He just wanted to add a little bit of clarification in there that he's it's more of his department that actually does the search for for a new police officer, but it's my office that authorizes him to do that. That was one comment that he had that I'll incorporate in here. Matt, you had suggested, some corrections along the lines of the DPW director. Basically calling out that it is a salary position, even though we were kind of calling it a contracted position in here.
Yeah.
So we might have to just either put in a different header or find a different way to kind of explain that procedure, just because it's its own separate process for that position.
I'm gonna hold that thought and back us up for a second. Do we approve 4 sets of minutes or 3?
4?
Okay, I thought I heard 3, not 4, that's all.
Oh.
Yeah.
I see the 4th one's here. so-
June 5th, November 13th, 14th, and 27th.
Oh, okay, good. Making sure we've approved them all for us, I know, sorry about that.
No problem. There were a few other comments I had received over the weekend too. I just haven't had a chance to go through them and enter them all in, but I just want to present this to you guys for kind of first review, and then at the next meeting, we can go through it again and possibly approve it. You guys are all set. But basically, the purpose of this procedure is to formalize the process so that way we're not kind of getting ahead of ourselves, appointing people and then not having the proper wages for them to the treasurer's office before they start. So that way, we're not, we're a few weeks into them being hired and not having the correct paperwork on our side. This is basically to just firm that up for the process.
Can I ask Andrew, who is the DPW director?
Jason Pimentel is the.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Does our classification plan or personnel stuff reference him as a superintendent? It just might,
Yes,
just for
I'm sorry.
consistency.
Yeah,
It's
I-
not a big deal, but consistency.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know if the
It-
actual title
It
itself
sounds
that
makes
was
it
like
just
different.
makes a difference, doesn't it, when you say that?
Yeah, that was just from personal history of the
Exactly.
position.
Yep.
As I was writing it, I kept on writing it, director. Like I said, a lot of times when I'm talking about departments, I'll actually put divisions.
Okay. Are we all set on that issue for now, or?
Yeah, as long as, if
Hmm?
you guys, so look it over, it's, in your spare time, and we'll take it up at the next meeting. I didn't anticipate voting
Okay.
on it tonight, but more of
One-
just comment.
Yep, Matt?
One thing I would recommend, because to some degree this will require a little buy-in from the DPW commission, is maybe make the changes we know we need to make and then send it to them, so we could maybe try to discuss it at next Monday's meeting.
Yeah, I will put those changes in. I have already sent it off to all the department heads for
Okay.
review. So, the DPW does have it, but I can incorporate those changes.
Right, but the other commission members,
Yeah, okay,
the actual
The actual-
water and sewer
okay.
commissioners, so that they can see if it's something they want to.
okay. No problem.
Thank you. Other than that, I think it's good. I mean, just minor tweaks in what we're talking about here, not really rewrites.
Okay. Town administrator goals. I guess this is something we've had some discussion with you on in the past, and I think probably at the end of the year and the start of another calendar year might be a good time to be taking a look at some of these.
Yeah, and I had just put down the ones that I had suggested, so I don't know if you guys want to go through and point out ones that you like, that you agree with, that you don't agree with, or additional ones that you'd like to add.
I didn't get a copy of that in this packet.
It's in the part of the administrator's report.
Oh,
The one of the last pages.
gotcha. One thing I would like to add, if you could, is set a deadline for you to complete an initial personnel review of each department head to create a baseline to work off of. I don't know don't know if maybe the end of January or something would sound reasonable or not. I'll give you a little time to think about that before you.
Okay. Be a slot for each department head.
Yeah, just for you to complete a personnel review with each, so it can.
Let's set that for January 31st.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And then whenever you complete them, you can come back to us and let us know how you think you might want to schedule that out. Whether with department heads, you just want to do it yearly, all at like the same month, January, or how you would like to approach
Okay,
it.
so, do you want to create the schedule by that time, or do you want me to meet with the department heads by that time?
Well,
Or
meet and
in-
complete the personnel reviews by then,
Okay.
but maybe by then you might know if it's something you want to stagger in the future or just do all at once again at a certain time of year.
What do you think about saying by January 31st we'll set goals for the department heads, and then in the next calendar year I can do personnel reviews? I'm just thinking.
Well, yeah,
6 months
I
in, I
figured the
don't
first
have-
one
yeah.
is just that,
Okay.
setting your goals.
Okay.
And then it's an actual review on the progress in meeting those goals.
Okay, that works.
Otherwise, the next time you meet them, it's once again just setting goals that we,
Right, exactly.
until we do
Yeah.
it, we never really get to start the process.
Yeah, yeah, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't, all right, doing a full review of what they've done and then
Yeah.
only have a limited exposure to them, so.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, thank you. We have a scheduled discussion on Stetson School, and I ask that this be placed on the agenda for tonight, and I guess if it's all right with the board, I'd like to keep something along with the Stetson School ongoing. As you know, we'd had some discussion about trying to recoup some funds by maybe asking Senator Goby and Representative Berthium to file a bill on our behalf. I know the filing deadline comes up very soon, at the end of this calendar month, if I'm not mistaken. And unless it's changed since I worked there. But the bill, and it may be more a symbolic gesture, but at least it would be something to recoup some of the monies that we're spending up here and not getting anything back on. And this has just gotten out of control with this group. And it's the state that's been placing them in there, and I honestly feel the state should be paying, and we should be sending bills to this place. They're not very cooperative. And our police are up there all the time, and I guess there's water bills that erode probably, and this and that. I think they can be a little more cooperative, but I think the state is allowing them, as is the one that placed all these people here. Nobody's arguing to deny services, but I think we gotta cover our cost. And I guess Andrew would need a letter to, or an email at the very least, to Senator Goby and ask him to file a bill. I don't care how they get the money. My opinion is it should be taken straight from the agencies that are putting them here. And that's the only thing they're going to understand, is that right out of their pocketbook, unfortunately.
They had another run on Friday night. The police were notified at 10 minutes till 10. The kid get out at 8:15. So they're certainly not keeping us informed as we've asked, and I think it's time to maybe think about some local sanctions on businesses. Any business that's a nuisance like that, and it's a nuisance. And we should find a way and see if there's anything out there, the language, you can let them determine it to be a nuisance.
Mhm.
And take steps according to that. Perhaps they should fence in a portion of the property, a portion of the buildings, we said before. And we may have to, if we don't have a nuisance bylaw, perhaps we need to make one.
Yeah.
But that business is a business, nonprofit or not, and it's a nuisance to this town, and it's a burden on the town.
Yep.
It's-
Did
Kathy?
you know that a week ago Saturday, they had 911 hang-up calls from the Stetson School from 6:30 at night till about 9:30 at night? 911 hang-ups.
No, I didn't know
They
that.
were just going back and forth
Yeah.
with that 3-hour period. It was crazy.
And I think there should be, at the very least, it's kind of like if you're making continuous calls like that and they're using us to do the enforcement, they should pay.
9 times.
I mean, no-
I would think there already is false 911 penalties established.
Yeah, there are for
Yeah, not to the
alarms and-
organization, to the individual making the call.
But you question, how did they get to the phone to do the
Tomato,
911
tomato.
call?
Came from there, 6,
9
7, 8,
times.
9.
Yeah.
That's,
Well,
they need to control their phone lines and control their business. And if they're dragging us up there, it may not be a legal issue, but there may be a monetary issue for it, which is what they'll understand.
Isn't there a bylaw that says if you respond so many times to a call that after so many times the town pays or the people pay for the fire trucks, police crews or whatever to respond?
Yeah, and I don't know.
I don't know what we have adopted. That would be the key, is making sure we've
feel that's
adopted
like-
bylaws. Even for fire calls, you can charge for one false alarm, but I don't know if we have adopted those
I feel like
laws.
there was I don't know if it's a bylaw, but I remember something about alarms.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe the businesses, the alarms got tripped constantly, so we were being called there because their alarm systems.
Yeah.
I think there was some kind of
Yeah, there
law
was.
or,
Yeah, there
Something
was.
like that.
We adopted one when I was on the board before previously, and I think it was after the third call, they got billed, because, you know, they were basically, instead of repairing their alarms, they
I don't
were
think it had to do with 911 though, I think it had to do with
I
those
think any kind of
automated,
false
automatic calls.
automatic
I think
alarms.
any kind of false call or any kind of repetitive call that's not a real issue, whether it's a 911 or a faulty fire alarm, I mean, you can fix a smoke detector after once or twice and figure it out. You can certainly take control of your phones wherever they're calling 911 from.
assuming they're using a facility phone. I don't know what regulations they have to their own cell phone usage.
Well, if they're using cell phones, we'd have to find the cell phone user and pass penalties. Now there's an individual false, that could be prosecuted.
I'm just identifying
Oh,
the
yeah, but I'm
potential
saying-
complexities and difficulties, even in expecting them to be able to figure out who that is.
911, if it's a cell phone, we'll know whose cell phone it was. There's an owner on the phone.
I'm assuming you're correct.
So that's
I just don't know well
traceable.
enough.
That's traceable, loggable. It comes in at a number. They can't hide that from 911. And then, so we have the location. We can have the owner of the phone, and they can be held responsible for it.
Assuming it's a registered number.
Yeah, there's workarounds on that.
If
Cer-
you're
certainly
buying
possible.
like your kid a phone and you're not sure they're gonna be able to keep it for whatever reason, maybe you buy them the burner phone, $20 from convenience store.
What they do too.
And so now it's, whose phone is it?
You
Like
can even get a,
track phone.
you can
Yeah.
get a false number through
Yeah.
Google
Now we go
Voice.
back
That's the other thing,
facility.
you can present a fake number.
If it
through
was
the
our own
system.
home, we're responsible for our kids' actions, and that school's responsible for every kid they have there. Period.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't control them, they can't keep them under control, then they need to be penalized for that. And they need to figure out a way to get them, and that's the whole point. They're not taking care of the students they have.
This thing is-
If any home had their kids running around town, dialing 911, running the streets, interrupting traffic, and having the cops down there 6 times, that family would be penalized. They're responsible for those kids, and this school is fully responsible for those kids, and everything done by those kids should be treated like any home that does it. They have to learn to control the kids. If they can't, then the school should be shut down. And that's a serious consideration, shutting the school down. If this continues, we could certainly go after a legal process in court to shut them down. I would have no problem with that.
At this point, I don't think I would.
They're not a great contributor to the town. They're a great nuisance, and they're not working with us, and they're taking no steps to help us. They're not calling our police until 2 hours after someone's gone, which is absolutely ridiculous. We should have a call in 15 minutes. If they find the kid, call us back. If they never mind, we found him here on
But
campus.
at that point, police are already going there, because they called. And they're not turning around till they show up, because they're responding to a call. So they do need some time to do their own due diligence to search their own facility for the child.
But the first 15 minutes...
So, I mean, you've got to figure out what's reasonable. 15 minutes is not reasonable to figure out where on that campus the kid went.
If they don't have good enough eyes on those kids from 15 minutes, we've got a problem with the facility again.
It's not a lockdown facility. So
I
all I'm saying is, you've got to really consider the challenge that they also have with what they're trying to do for the state social services. They are giving children that apparently have already had difficulty being disciplined, and now they're brought to another place. So in other words, it's not like they have a family of kids that grew up with one or two parents that kind of say, this is the rules of the house. It's they grew up somewhere else, and then they're thrown here, told the new rules, and they're not necessarily jumping on board. So all I'm suggesting is they have a much greater challenge than the average family when it comes to how do you control the people under your house.
Every given building has limited entrance and exits, so they have limited access to the building. Those doors can very simply be alarmed. The alarm can trip. They can have cameras outside those doors to see who goes and leaves and actually what direction they go in.
And that's
There's-
more what I
there's-
think
there's
is
no
what
reason-
needs to be in that
My
bill.
point is, since they've taken none of these steps in years to try to, they've done nothing to try to limit this. There's many things they could do to stop this. They've done nothing. And they need sanctions. These are obvious steps. I mean, it takes 2 seconds to say, hey, let's put an alarm on the door and put a camera outside the door. If this is a military barracks where we're training soldiers, there's a fire guard, there's someone responsible in the main office and the main floor all night long. They should be watching cameras in each of those hallways. There's absolutely no excuse to have a kid missing for 2 hours. They get enough money, they can put cameras and alarms on the doors.
I don't disagree with they could do a better job.
But it's not up to us to
So-
tell them to do that or how to do it, but if they're not gonna take steps, and that's a very simple, obvious step, if they're not gonna take steps to deter this, we have to, and they should be serious steps. I think 15 minutes is plenty of time to have known the kids walked out the door. They should have that established before they built the dang place. What lack of intelligent thought would let you build a building like that and not have a camera in a way to watch those kids? Especially when they're a flight risk. They've got to have some, I don't believe for a second they don't have someone in that building 24 hours a day.
Almost no facility that has cameras have people monitoring the cameras the whole time. It's a use to go back and look at after, which means you're going through each camera and you're chasing time, you're
Right.
using time to do it.
But a
So if you
facility-
find out someone's missing and it takes 15 minutes to tell the people in charge we're gonna find them,
This facility.
then they gotta spend the time to go find them. So I'm just saying, what is a reasonable amount of time to allow them to find them before you expect them to contact us? I don't think 15 minutes is even close to reasonable.
I think that
I'm not sure 2 hours is
They-
needed.
I don't disagree. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
that's-
there's got to be a reasonable,
I
and
think-
that's all I'm trying to
I
say
think
is
15 minutes is reasonable, and if we start down there in 15 minutes, the kid won't get very far, and we'll probably pick him up very quickly if he's left. In 15 minutes gives them enough time to, if they're paying attention, which they should be, and they need to start, whoever's in that building, and they have cameras, should be watching them. They should be at their desk doing what they're paid to do and watch those cameras. They should see who walks down the hall, and certainly if alarm goes, they should be able to look it up very quickly. You know, it was door one, let's look at camera one, here's who left and where he went. Then you have a description for the police and you make a phone call, but that still gives you 5 to 10 minutes to go out the door and look for him quick. And if you can't find him in 10 minutes, you should have the police there.
I'm not saying that
Before-
that
they're
what you're,
looking at our road map. They're looking all the way down to Station 1 the other night. That's a big search, you know,
That's a lot
circumference
of
diameter.
area.
Because they've waited so long.
and please forgive me. I'm
I
not
wanna-
trying to
Yeah, I know
say
that.
that what you're proposing is wrong, but I'm just saying that as kind of a devil's advocate, these are the answers you're going to get when you start saying that, because I don't know the procedures in place already. I don't know how many adults there are to how many children during each event, whether they're walking out in the yard, is it one person to 20 kids? Is it one? I don't know how they do lunch programs. I don't know how they do showers. I don't know what causes distractions and makes it difficult for the adults to know what's going on. I'm not saying anything you said couldn't be implemented, but I am saying usually these systems are well underfunded and therefore they don't have the number of personnel to do what you're suggesting. One person on the floor and one person at a desk watching cameras. That's why I'm saying I agree with, we gotta try something, but it might be, when you talked about maybe a bill at the state level, putting this, writing it such, like you said, put the burden on them, but if you fail to, and we have to respond repeatedly, then we have a right to request for the cost of that.
They are
Just
not-
that
they are
simply,
not a
without
good
getting into
neighbor.
the weeds on how to.
They are not a good neighbor, they are not an asset to this community. They've had lots of opportunity and time to try to do something to work in this, and they're uncooperative and unresponsive. They are not a good neighbor. They are not an asset to this town.
Right.
And I would like to see harsh penalties on them. I would love to see their doors closed at the rate they're going. But I think to certainly give them 15 minutes should wake them up and take it a little more seriously. Give us a chance to find the kids before they get very far.
I got you.
I'm just tired of seeing these kids run down the street. You know, I watched them last summer, you know, flipping cars off, running in and out of traffic, pounding on the side of cars. I mean, it happens on a regular basis, and they've got to be able to control the kids.
I understand that.
And they need to take measures to do it. If they can't, then they shouldn't be running as a business. If they can't handle the one thing that they're to do, they shouldn't be in business. Because that's their only job, is to watch after these kids.
It's a lot more than that.
Well-
It's not just keep them in a room and don't let them out.
No, but they're responsible for them. And if
Agreed.
they're taking on more than they're responsible for, then they're irresponsible. That's my point. You know,
That's a
if
state issue that, the whole state's been doing that, taking
they're a
on more than
business,
they
and
can
they're a
handle.
business that's in this to make money. This is not the state. This is a private facility that owns it,
The whole
making a lot
system
of money
is
off the
that.
state.
Agreed, the whole system is that. But
And-
that's from the state down, because the state created the guidelines that allow it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think having worked for one of these agencies at one time involved, I think they do not want, the state agencies do not want the local police called. That is like the last resort. And having worked there, they were told, employees were told, and there was quite a bit of discussion about this, but, and that's one of the things that bothers me. It was done, and if they didn't budget enough money to handle the job, then they should have held off on making these moves until they were ready. And, I really irritated about this. The fact that they refused to meet with the full board bothers me immensely. That, we'll meet with one member or something. Well, you meet with the board, because we're a board. And, I mean, they're receiving public funds, and they should be held accountable with those funds. And we're a public body, and that bothered me as well. What are they trying to hide because they don't want to be part of a public meeting? Well, that's too bad. Then they should have thought of that before they entered into a partnership in the public sector, is my opinion. That one really irritated me, too. We're not a one-member board, so. But
We also
that's
ought to-
another
We
pet,
also ought to
that's
consider
another pet peeve of mine.
denying any more permits to build any more establishments down there.
Yeah,
We don't have that right.
Sure we do.
Not unless you write up new zoning laws, and that's their job, not ours.
Right now, it's a nuisance facility.
Right, but we cannot deny building something if it works within the zoning rules and regs and the building permit and
Of course we
building
can.
codes. We don't have that right.
We can deny it for our reasons, and they can take us to court and argue to have the right to do it, and then we can discuss all that in a courtroom if they like. And we'll see how a judge feels, if they agree. If they can't handle the kids they have now, they shouldn't have more.
and that's a
Take
state.
them somewhere else.
Yeah.
I would deny a permit if they come for a permit, and I would deny them the right to expand that facility and take on more kids until they have these ones under control. If they can't come up with a reasonable method to keep these kids in, we're just gonna have more kids there, more escapes, and more interactions in the public. And some of these kids are in fact dangerous kids. A lot of just trouble kids. There are dangerous kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's a public danger to people who live here. Not to mention that every time they take our police away for 2 hours at a time or an hour looking for them, that's a draw on our public safety for everyone else in town. I would feel very strongly that if need be, we deny them a building permit if they want to build more structures. And if they want to fight that in the court system, that's a great avenue to get out there and discuss this.
Okay.
I'm sure legal counsel will have input on that, but I think it's a pretty normal tactic. We can deny it on the grounds that they're a nuisance and they can't handle what they have already.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that.
So what I'd like to do is just keep it on there. If we have something new to add to it, we can. If we don't, we can just go right over it at the regular meetings. But I think we need to keep pushing on this. And Andrew, you have our feeling with the state on getting a hold of them. I know the deadline's coming up. I can't tell you what the day is.
And if
We have
that-
statistics on the number
Yep.
of calls, et cetera, that we can present with that letter.
And maybe we need to ask the planning board to consider developing a new zoning bylaw, which would restrict any such structure for that many beds, without approval of the board, the planning board and the select board, prior to construction.
Maybe more approval of the police chief and the fire chief,
Yeah.
whatever roles they think they'll be playing.
And then we have to be satisfied that they're going to, take all these measures into account before they build something. That's an easy enough zoning bylaw, zoning change to make. Just cover that, maybe a new section to cover,
Mm-hmm.
large bedroom facilities. Large bedrooms, say anything over 4 or anything over 6, whatever sounds like appropriate numbering. A
Can you
normal home
check-
goes up to about 4, I think.
Can you look into what rights we have to look into their books and things like that based on being the quasi-public entity that they are? Pretty much built on public funds. Because I'd like to know what the upper ranks are getting paid, and then the total number of faculty versus the total number of,
I think that's on
Students.
file with the Attorney General's office.
Well, actually, it's
What
not
they-
school.
Nonprofits pay.
It's,
I'm trying to be polite,
yeah, I'm trying, what
Because
do they
it's
call it? Residents.
residents.
Faculty residents would be appropriate.
But I just mean that I don't want to get caught stereotyping everybody there, so I was just trying to be polite, because not everyone,
No, I'm speaking in general.
and I follow what you mean.
Okay. All right, I guess Dennis, you arrived. We all set with that for now?
Mhm.
Okay.
Just 1 second, the chief is actually texting me real quick, guys, whether or not we were still discussing it, so, see whether or not he's coming over.
Who?
Chief, police chief.
If he's coming over, well, we can readdress it when he gets here, if you'd like.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still on the agenda, we can get back to it if he wants.
Sorry, yeah, just go on. He's-
Sure.
he's not gonna- he's not gonna be able to make it.
Okay, Dennis, you're perfect timing.
Yes, huh?
You just walked in and you come right up here. Dennis is here on behalf of the 9/11 Monument Committee.
Actually,
And we see we got,
I'm not here for the 9/11.
oh, you're not? I thought you were.
This is for a future 9/11 monument on the Barry Common, not to be confused
Oh, the other
with
half.
the existing one that's going in, not existing, the one that's already been charged with the public safety building.
Okay.
This is separate. Also here, Mr. Musnicki and Mr. Haddocker are members of the Legion.
Yep, would they like to come up with us, or
Carlos.
come on up?
You don't bite. Here, sit there, I'll sit over here. I got it. Won't sit.
Oh, hi, Dave.
Okay, Mr. Bentley, Robert Bentley, who's a member of the Historical Society in town, came to one of our Legion meetings that he's a member of and mentioned about a grant for renovations, repairs, or future memorials that was available through the state historical grant. And he mentioned it and had a application for it, which he handed to me, and because we had talked about a future memorial on the North Common, that would be more along the lines as the military one, not the first responder one that is going to go at the Newark facility. It's the State Historical Records Advisory Board, and it had a time constraint on it that had to be done within days. So I took it upon myself to draft up a quick proposal in order to meet the deadline for that first stage of this grant application process. They liked what they saw and sent notice back that they wanted us to be part of the second phase of that, which doesn't guarantee we'll get it or not. I had spoken with Administrator Golis and Administrative Assistant Zukowski and today earlier, and discussed a little bit about this. And I just want to read a quick note here. So members of Post 2 have gotten a grant app from Mr. Bentley for the State's Historic Commission for Veterans Memorials upkeep, repairs, or installations. We would fit into the installation aspect. There was a deadline to get, which I just mentioned. Now we're looking to go through the second round of the proposal by submitting a more detailed application, and that's why we're here, to ask the town's help with the grant aspect of that, because it has to go through the town, not
Right.
us. I only got involved it really quickly because of the time constraint, and if something didn't get put in, we would have lost out on it. We had asked that the town administrator, Mr. Golis, and Administrative Assistant Faye Zukowski be allowed to work on us to completing a grant app which needs to be submitted to the Historical Commission by the 15th of this month. So they don't give you a lot of room to play with, and unfortunately, that's just the way it is. The next, I had given to Administrator Golis the application paperwork, and that what we're looking to do is we're looking for $15,000 from that grant, but we're also going to ask that the selectmen request from the Barry Common Committee, and I don't know if it's a conflict because I serve on that as the vice chair, I could abstain from a vote. But we're looking for matching funds from any monies that are left from that project to be put with the 15 that we possibly may get from the state to put a memorial on North Common. We had spoken with Jason Benoit, who is a pretty well-known engineer, and also he is a really good mason and he's a stonemason. He's actually quite artistic with it. I don't know if any of you have ever seen some of his work, but he's amazing. He, during the project for the North Common, located where the original granite pillars that go all the way around the common to hold the rails came from, and they came off of Hawes Hill, which was 100 and some odd, obviously over 100 years ago. But he knows the quarry where they came from, and he said he'd be willing to, of course with the town's blessing, look into mining some of that so we could use it towards the memorial, and it could be equated into a proposal, which I think would be rather a significant point to make in the application process, because it is a historical common, and it would match the same stonage that's there already. I think it's kind of cool. So I just wanted to touch base on that with you. So that's what we're asking for. We're asking, what we would do is, we could meet with Mr. Golis and Fay. Amongst ourselves, we also have, some ideas what we would like to propose, but we need to put on the application for the second round of this in writing, that this is where we want to go from that point, to make the deadline by the 15th, in hopes that they like what they hear and we'll go to the next phase from there. I'm not exactly sure where in that queue and how far it goes, but we've gone this far and we want to continue with it. And it'd be good to get grant money to do it.
Mhm.
So, yes, sir.
Is the matching 15,000 requirement as part of the second step of the application, or a commitment of such?
Yes and no. It could determine whether if it was 10,000 and 10,000, if they want like a matching amount.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure what the process would cost, but, you know, using local talent and stuff, we may be able to keep the costs down. We don't want some elaborate thing down there. The monuments that are down there now are pretty simplistic, and they make a good statement. So we want to keep in a line the same type of thing. Nothing, you don't want to take away from any of the others by putting something more, you know.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I was just curious because of the timeline of, as you're suggesting, funding and means and methods of funding, and because also in the back of my mind, I'm saying we previously talked about upgrades to the gazebo that we've been pushing off for forever. That just, it's almost like you can't wait anymore on that one.
Yeah, they mentioned.
So I don't know what the balance of common funds were, if that's applicable or not, but it's a consideration that would have to be taken as to whether that could be used that way.
Well, I did
So it's just
talk
a
with
thought.
Attorney Cranston to get his input on, you know, how to proceed. He did?
He snuck in.
I'm glad you told me.
So don't lie. No, I'm just joking.
Were you hiding there?
Yeah, he mentioned that we come before you and pitch this, so, you know, he made no guarantees on anything. He just said it's gotta go through the board and the right channels, so that's why we wanted to come here.
Are we sure there's still granite in that quarry, and is it privately, or who owns the quarry?
Jason has all that information.
If we're gonna count on him, kinda need to make sure we have the right to get there or permission.
I think he uses it currently, so I don't think there's a problem with that. I'm pretty sure it may even be on land that he owns, because he lives up by there. That's how he found it.
I guess,
In fact, you know the stone cow in front of the brewery? That's Jason did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the idea. I definitely like supporting the idea. The real key here is that very common, whatever the balance is on that, I really don't want it to take away from the gazebo work that's needed, because I know it just keeps getting pushed off, and we know we gotta do it. And the railings especially, because right now we're just crossing our fingers every time the wrong person goes up there. So I don't know if we've gotten to a point of getting any actual estimates on what it would take to do gazebo stuff, if anybody's been working that or not, but that would have to factor, and if we're talking about a 2 weeks to figure out what we could put towards yours, means we have also 2 weeks to find out what's left. I mean, ballpark numbers usually are good enough to do that, but we need some ideas to figure out before we take what it's kind of been discussed already to use that money for, and then say, never mind, we're gonna go here, and then have that sit there again and figure out how we're gonna fund that. So it's just a thought but I know the timeline makes it really hard, and I don't wanna lose out on what you're suggesting.
So, I just have a question. So, I mean, even if the money wasn't available in the common project balance, let's just say, we could always apply for the grant and see what happens and go to town meeting with an article. If they're
That was my
awarded this, right?
That was my thought.
I mean,
Yeah,
worst
but you gotta
case,
be careful when you submit it, because if they're asking for matching and you say we'll match, but then the town says, no, I'm not gonna spend that, you kind of are,
Well,
you're leaving a black mark for any future applications to the same source, because they're like, they said they would match and then they didn't. So, it's a risk is all I mean. It doesn't necessarily mean it couldn't happen, but it's a risk.
Try to get a budget together on what's left by the end of the week.
I'm not sure as if in this preliminary part of this that you have to have a guarantee for that. That part I don't know. It is in the process, it says a matching. At what point does that have to be a commitment? I don't know. This part is basically, they want a breakdown of what it is you're looking to do, where, estimate of what you think it'll cost, that sort of thing. And that's why, keep the numbers low. At some later point, depending on the actual costs of things, like with the other monuments, they have names engraved like that. That could be a second phase of the project. We could, again, apply for something, or we could do benefits or ask the town to help us with it. There's all kinds of ways we could come up with that.
Is this one specific to military monuments?
Yes, because it's on the North Common, that's the military.
No, I meant the application, the grant is specific for military?
No, it's not monuments.
Okay, because I was just, again, I love the idea, but how come we're not thinking about that for the monument you're doing down at the public safety building?
Because that one's in the stage of getting an architect or people to bid on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where that stands. We haven't had a meeting in quite a while. I have no idea.
Okay.
This is a separate entity altogether.
Understood too, I'm just curious, just thinking out loud.
I think it's a good idea. Obviously, you need to, as long as the board agrees, you need to get out and get in contact with the common committee, make sure that they're okay with spending the funds that way, and that they're okay with the project up there.
Just for a point of information, according to this, part of that 15,000 match can include in-kind costs. So anything that,
Like a donated
Yeah.
boulder of granite.
well, even the other DPW provides service,
Mhm.
volunteer time is prorated at $29 an hour. So as long as time is tracked and you can count for up to $15,000 of that, it could basically be zero out of pocket.
So,
That's positive.
That makes it
I
a
mean,
lot
with that
easier.
information, I would have no problems. Again, this is also a balance of Andrew and Faye's availability. I mean, we all know short notice means they
Yeah.
got other things.
Absolutely.
But if they have the time to provide to assist, and they can come up with ideas where they think that in-kind can be found, we can find a way, whether it's the common, very common fund, or some other source and combination, then I would have no problem making a motion to see if the town administrator's office could support this application and work towards a positive end.
We'll all help any way we can.
Okay,
Say-
so the first order of business is you need us to do the application.
Correct.
Correct.
We
Okay.
in turn need to meet and discuss with Faye and Andrew the idea of what should be done there, then they put it into the application and go
Okay.
forward that way.
Okay.
And that's just an idea. I mean, when it comes down to brass tacks, it's like, that idea may morph into something else. Because by then, hopefully, and that was the last thing I wanted to ask, that we start the process of getting a committee for this.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, obviously you would do it by public application and all of that, so we'd like to get that going as well.
And we should ask Faye and Andrew, do you have time to put to this? Do you think you can put a little time aside with them?
Sure.
I mean, before we say, I don't want to charge you to do it, if you're not gonna. if
I do
it's-
too.
If it's not realistic, you gotta get done.
Put as much time as I can.
Can it get,
Okay.
One question last, just because I'm not completely familiar with it, is on the North Common. Do we generally defer to one particular commission or committee that has, what can you do in this? Historical primarily?
Mhm.
And that's what Bob Bentley, he's the one that had been made aware of that application for the grant. he passed that on. I believe the Historical Society may or may not have applied for something else for somewhere else in town, I don't know. But
We probably just need them to also provide some type of a vote or letter of
Well, they
support
need
to
to-
this, to allow us to go much further also. You know, I don't wanna start acting ahead and then realize that,
well, you,
that's all I mean, I just wanna make sure that I know Bob's aware, I don't know about everybody on that, so I just wanna make
Right.
sure at least it's presented to them and they have the opportunity to make, I'm not saying it has to happen before December 15th.
and one of the slots, right, and one of the slots for that committee probably should be set aside for a member of that, so they have a direct input.
Yeah.
You know, kinda like we did with the other committee, where you
Mhm.
had, you know, fire personnel, EMS, police.
And we kinda
and
broke out.
historic- Yeah, kind of the same thing.
Makes
It's
sense.
just a different location. It's exactly the same kind of thing.
Well, I'll make a motion that we move forward with the application and ask the administrator and assistant to help them
Okay,
go
do
through the
I,
second stage.
okay, do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay, discussion, any further discussion? Do you gentlemen wish to add anything at this point? No?
And
Matt?
The only thing I would add is, if Andrew sees something and says, you do that, then bring it back to me, you guys, obviously, you just said you would, but just recognize, we are asking a lot of them right now, running into the holidays and all that, so. If he's like, could you fill out 90% of this application and just let me fill out what I need to, that's all, that type of work.
we'll help any way we can.
Okay, very good.
I'll even babysit.
What was
The
that
agenda
again?
item says 9/11 Monument Committee.
Yeah.
So these members of the committee are bringing this thought, so it was a generic.
Two different things, though. You're talking two different things.
This was brought before us by the 9/11 committee previously stating that there would be a sister monument done up on, and so my understanding, it was a member of that committee, and that's why it fell under as the generic 9/11 committee on the agenda. Because it has a sister relationship with what the 9/11 committee is doing right now. That's why I believe it was written that way. That's the best answer I have.
And also, the name of that monument would be 9/11 Iraq, Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Which one, Dennis? The first one or the new one?
The new one.
The new one will be that?
The sister one on, right, the North Common that they're suggesting.
There'll be veterans, names that have served
Okay.
in those activities put on that.
So the next time it goes on the agenda, it will be either or.
Right.
Okay.
With that, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 That's unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. I like the idea.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Yes, ma'am. I have candy.
Okay, I guess we're on to the CPC, and Paul, we're back to the letter of non-opposition. Okay.
So, the reason I am back here is because of the letter that's on top of the free document that I gave you. That's a letter from the department saying they didn't like our letter because it didn't include the specific language that is attached to your package in the second portion. And the reason that it didn't follow the specific language, which is in its B, in that template, option B, is because all three of you signed the document. So the language in template B didn't necessarily make sense, so we modified it a little bit because all three of you signed it. And apparently that offended somebody down at the Department of Public Health, so they want to use their form that says, I have been authorized, I meaning, I guess, one of you has been authorized by all of you to sign the letter, which makes absolutely no sense to me, but that is your government. They don't want all three of you to sign it, even though all three of you said yes. They only want one of you to sign it and have the other, all of you vote to have one of you sign it. It's absolutely ridiculous. So, I'm back here wasting everyone's time. Is what it amounts to.
I make a motion to authorize Charlie to sign this letter on our behalf.
That's exactly what I was going to suggest.
Okay, well, thank you. Do I have a second to the motion?
Sure. Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
I did send that.
Yes.
It's in their package.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, it's in our packet.
Is it on our letterhead?
Yes.
Your letterhead?
Yes, not ours.
The draft letter.
Yeah.
Should be a draft, but.
Well, if I've got it, it's
In the
not
packet,
really
it might
like
be.
these letters. That's all
It's not a letterhead here.
That's unbelievable.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
Right here.
The whole idea.
It does,
Really
it does say authorized member of the board.
Right.
I mean, it does say that.
I thought three would be
It
better
doesn't
than
say
one.
members,
Like,
it does
Seems
they
like
only
that would
want
make it
before.
unanimous, and then,
It's after the,
yeah. I've never heard of the term non-opposition before. You either are in favor or you're not. But I've never heard that term until I came. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. With that, I'll call for a vote in favor.
All right.
Aye.
Charlie, you have authorization.
Yep. Do you need that signed?
Do you have a clean one?
well, I don't. I'll have them sign it tomorrow, I'll get it to you.
Fantastic.
Unless you wanna take one out of the
Let's take
package.
one out of the
It doesn't matter to me. If you want to have one with a nice, pretty colored seal on it,
Nope,
you don't want to have one of those.
They might send it back again.
Right.
here, I'll take one
Yeah.
apart.
That's just unbelievable.
You want a copy of that anyway when you're done.
You didn't have. You didn't have to sign.
I might have them.
Or you have a letter. Well, how can you follow the signatory rules?
I looked this.
That one's cleaner.
This is an original.
Well, this is a better.
One copy's better than prints.
You know.
Depends on what machine you're using, I'm guessing,
Oh, yeah.
or what ink was going on at the time.
That's the problem. We ask for logical things from the government.
Can I just make a copy of that, or can you scan that and send that to me?
I most certainly can.
Thank you kindly.
Yeah, that, I just couldn't believe they made us do that. I guess I can't believe it.
They just want to be able to go after Charlie personally if,
Well, I think
if he
there's-
lied.
That's someone just justifying their job, that's all.
Yeah, they don't want to make the decision.
It was easier
Put
to
it
have
on.
you change this document than them change theirs to say member or members.
Well, the problem is the document doesn't really take into consideration all the different ways that this happens in different towns and cities.
And then it should just say member or members of the board of the council. Add two words to it and get it.
I think you're covered. I think the official name is still Board of Selectmen, not
Yeah.
Select Board, and this and that, I don't
Goes
know.
like this to-
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Sorry
you.
for taking your time.
Good luck.
Thank you.
It's unbelievable.
Okay, do we have any other old business before we move? Gentlemen, do you have any other old business for Peg? Okay. DCR land acquisition, Hawes Hill Road.
So you have this in your packet.
Mhm.
We received this letter from DCR, they're looking to acquire 37.97 acres of land for water supply protection and public access to passive outdoor recreational purposes. And this is on Osdale Road by the intersection of Baldwin Road.
Mm-hmm.
Looking to see whether or not you have any objection to that.
Board members?
What general area of Barry is this at?
Kind of up behind, I would think, Insight Meditation, I bet you.
Yeah, you go up past
Yeah.
Insight and first right,
If
first
it's
road.
38 acres, it could be,
The dirt road that goes out.
Kind of south of Gaston Pond.
Hmm?
the other
That
side of
That's
the
the
road.
other side.
Linda Ivan lives out there.
You can also go up past your house out Phillipston Road and loop back around that way and get towards Haas Hill. It's that
Oh, okay.
block out
Alright.
there,
Yeah.
someplace.
Heading towards
If there's a
East
map.
Street and Peterson.
Yeah,
That-
it doesn't pan out very far.
Oh. Actually, this would be Pleasant Street right here. So
Going
Insight
up.
would be here. This
Okay,
is heading
gotcha.
north.
All right, perfect.
Mhm.
And if you follow Pleasant Street to the end, you loop back around, you'll come back to Phillipston Road if you want. Gets a little sketchy in the back there for a ways, but it comes through. I would assume this isn't a great tax revenue loss for us.
Do you have the information on that, but it's in that, while you're already under open space, 61 acre section.
Yeah, it says it was a former dairy farm
Yeah.
and pasture land, so it probably must be correct.
I have no problem with more open space.
Okay, we need to vote on this? We just need to
As
announce.
long as you can just,
They need us to agree to the 120-day
Right.
notice waiver.
it's, they're under 20 days, they're gonna do it irregardless, they just wanna know basically whether or not the board is going to be fighting against it.
I got a couple
just-
questions, because haven't we talked about the increased conservation land affecting our tax base because we're not getting proper compensation for conservation land like we think? And this would be another 37 acres that goes from taxable property to conservation land. So I am kind of curious how much we like them continually moving further east in Barry with large acquisitions of land. I don't know if we can even stop it, I'm just saying.
I don't know if you can stop somebody from
But we
selling
can buy
that
ourselves
land.
another 120 days if we
Yeah.
don't agree to the 120-day notice, if there's, and then we can speak to our kind representatives, Ann and Donnie, if we don't agree with the, I'm not saying we disagree or agree, I just, to me, there's just a little bit of a question in this.
I think the key is, I understand your question. I think the key is making sure that when they're doing the state budget in the spring, that they have enough money for payment and more taxes on state-owned land. And on this land, and Fish and Wildlife land, and the land owned by Mass Water Resources, which is the bulk of it's Mass Water Resources, I would guess, and the Ware River and Quabbin watersheds.
Well, it looks like if we don't sign the 120-day waiver letter, that in 120 days they can move forward with it anyways. And I assume we have to,
Well, the
I have to
120
sign the certificate of
days,
announcement anyways, because it's their intent.
If you waive it, they can do it sooner.
this meeting technically is part of their public notification.
Mm-hmm.
So us announcing it, but not waiving it, allows anybody that hears this message to take action if they feel action is worth taking. But they may not even know about this yet, and then if we waive it, I don't know if that means in 5 days something can happen just because we agreed to waive the 120-day notice and undercut anybody else's chance to even have a voice in the matter.
Fair enough.
I'm not against conservation land, I love it. But we have this, I know the topic came up before, and I'll be honest, I'm not completely educated on the whole, how much of your town becoming conservation land starts becoming a detriment to the overall value of the town. So I'd have to look at numbers, but I just wanted to bring it up for discussion because I'm just not 100% sure, but I'm not necessarily pushing for a certain action here.
I'd be willing to make a motion that I read the certificate of announcement and we do not act on the 120-day waiver.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
I make a motion that I read the certificate of announcement, but we do not act on the 120 waiver. We just
Still allow the time to,
allow the time. So I think it's a good point, and let people who may be abutters and nearby to have input if they want.
okay.
Okay, do I have a second for that motion?
I second that.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote in favor?
All right?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Do we have an official one for me to sign and fill out?
Maybe just the certificate of announcement.
Yeah, he didn't know we had a.
Oh, I don't
That's what I'm saying.
Sign.
Do
Oh,
we
I
have
might have a clean
Do we have a
one
clean one,
under
that's what I'm saying,
one.
that's stapled?
Just not put it on here.
I'll fill it out, and then I'll read it.
So I'll get back to them tomorrow, and just let them know that you did perform the announcement, they weren't.
This one here is
weren't
pretty
willing to
good.
grant the waiver.
I have an original, but it's fine.
Okay.
He's still gotta read it though. Officially.
What?
Officially, he's still gotta read this
Oh.
bold wording.
What I just,
It's the next page.
Who's reading that?
Greg will.
what am I reading here? The clerk of the board?
I think Greg reads that.
Yeah.
All right, we'll make a run at it.
Okay.
This is a certificate of announcement for the Board of Selectmen, Town of Barry, Massachusetts. I, Gregory O'Sullivan, clerk for the Select Board of the Town of Barry, Massachusetts, do hereby certify that on Monday, the 4th day of December 2017, it was announced at a public meeting of the Board of Selectmen that the Department of Conservation and Recreation might acquire an interest in a parcel of land located in Barry as shown on the attached locus map marked Exhibit A. This dated December 4th, 2017, signed by myself, Gregory O'Sullivan.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have surplus equipment.
In the administrator's report, I outlined the equipment that the fire department is requesting that the select board just put through disposition. They are a 1987 E1 fire engine, a 1984 Chevy emergency management pickup truck, and a 1977 Seagrave ladder truck. And if the select board votes to dispose of these, this equipment, we'll be putting it on municipal bid and trying to get the best bang for our buck.
I make a motion to identify 1987 E1 fire engine, 1984 Chevy emergency management pickup, 1977 Seagrave ladder truck as surplus equipment and can go on municipal bid.
Second the motion.
Okay, discussion. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we're down to the wage authorizations.
Which I did include that in our placement for the job. I step in value. So I don't know if we need to do it again or not.
Well, there's other ones we have to do.
Okay, but it'll be for hers anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, consider that one all.
I did that.
There's three, right?
There should be.
3 more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jason Messenger as firefighter EMT, Emma Stoddard as auxiliary firefighter, Jonathan Wheeler as truck driver skilled laborer.
What are the wishes of the board?
I make a motion to authorize the wage of Jason Messenger, firefighter EMT at $15.66 per hour. Also, do we need to be individual on these?
I guess it really doesn't matter. We usually do them separately. It'll be
Okay.
easier to follow on the meeting minutes if you don't mind.
Okay, then we'll end that motion there.
I second that.
Okay, discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
All right,
Okay, now we're on to,
I'll make a motion that we approve the wage authorization for Emma Stoddard, auxiliary firefighter, of $13.24 an hour.
okay, do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Okay,
I'll also make a motion that we authorize the wage for Jonathan Wheeler for a truck driver skilled laborer at the hourly rate of $18.29 per hour.
okay, do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
We have a request to use town property from Big Wins Arts for the use of town hall for a performance of the Nutcracker on Friday, December 8th.
I assume we've made sure there's no conflicts at the time?
Yeah, I checked the calendar.
Okay. Are they here for this?
No,
Um,
this group normally uses the town hall.
Okay.
Make a motion to accept. This is a profit, non-profit, is it paying 100 or the 50?
It's a nonprofit.
So it goes for the $50 non-profit fee.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. In favor?
All right.
Aye.
Okay. Selectmen's reports. I thought the the Christmas parade and everything that went with it was a very, very nice day for our town, and the people that put it on did a really nice job. I thought the parade was a success, and the involvement, and
It was nice to see the Historical Society open up the buildings down there too at the same time. I didn't
Mhm.
expect that.
Yeah, it was.
I hadn't walked through those before, so it was nice to go.
yeah, it was nice.
Good day. Good day.
Put out a big thank you to the Christmas and Berry Committee for their efforts in trying to get this organized and make it happen.
Mhm.
And I did walk
It's
through.
quite a challenge.
I walked through the craft fair too. There's quite a few tables and they look pretty busy.
Nice.
So I think it went well overall.
Thank you. And we'll continue to grow with it.
Okay.
Get that gazebo fixed and.
Thanks.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep. I'd asked Andrew to inquire about, there's a building right next to the Station One, the fire station. It's been unoccupied for probably 7 years. Somebody purchased it, I would say about 2 years ago, began working on it, took out a building permit, I believe, for windows and doors. Removed the roof structure on the fire department side, rebuilt the roof structure that's not properly framed. It's too slow a slope, it's undersized members. The ridge poles not properly supported. They cut away roof rafters on the other side. And they removed the entire load-bearing wall in the back basement that attaches to the foundation. And it's attached by a stacked beam built up inside the floor with some 6x6 posts at an angle, resting on top of the foundation, and they later kind of filled it in with concrete blocks in between there to make it look like a basement again. But the whole structure is very unsafe. Andrew didn't get any response from the building inspector, so I asked the secretary to have her go look at it. She informed me the building inspector didn't see a problem with the building. Very, very disappointing because it's in horrible shape. This is my trade. And I'm not speaking, that I don't like it. I'm saying structurally it is unsound. It's not anchored to the structure. The building is listing about 5 degrees towards the fire station. I think the garage is the only thing holding the main structure up. And the secretary informed me they have no building permit on record for it, but it's still hanging in the window of the house. So I don't know how they've lost that, and I'm kind of concerned about how that commission is handling this. And I'm concerned as to why we don't have a permit on record for it when it's still hanging in the window. And a permit that was taken out for windows and doors when the structural changes to the building are completely obvious and apparent from the outside of the building, why this isn't getting addressed. And I would like us to, if we don't have something on the books, do something to address abandoned buildings like this. Sooner or later, when they sit long enough, someone starts getting in there, and someone starts lighting the fires to stay warm, and this is when we get structural fires like we had in Kendall Street last year, from people getting inside and trying to keep warm. This is how that fire happened when the Worcester 6 died. These buildings are a serious problem, and I'm frustrated that I haven't gotten a response from myself asking the commissioner to look into it. I thought maybe if the board requested that she look into this and do what she can, and or the Board of Health, whatever we need to do to condemn this building, but it should be condemned. They're right now attempting to sell this building with photographs from about 8-10 years ago, maybe longer than that, 15 years ago, when it was last rehabbed inside. So they have misleading pictures, misleading write-up, and they're hoping someone's gonna buy it, obviously, someone's gonna buy this assuming that it's had, sanctioned work done on the structure by this town. And I think we need to make sure that it's clearly not sanctioned and clearly not safe.
I have a question. Did we ever follow up was it a joint code enforcement officer? We were talking about getting someone that I thought was going to handle the actual filing of code violations or following up on zoning bylaw. I thought there was a discussion about needing.
But for the fire
Yeah,
inspection side, we
fire
needed,
inspection.
fire
For
inspector,
code enforcement, we were talking about, I thought.
they would be able to write tickets, I think, for that as well.
That is, all on the fire inspector side, that was the
Mhm.
discussion, so.
But there's a course needed that was only offered twice a year, it doesn't come up till the spring, so that fire inspector can't get certified to write those citations until springtime. That means we can't fine them monetarily, it doesn't mean we can't find a problem with the structure or.
I don't think we can. I think that was the fire chief's concern, that they have no mechanism to ticket people at this point without this.
But we do if we
Certification.
ask a local neighboring town that has that certified person to.
The appeals board, we need to basically have an appeals board,
Mhm.
or an appeals person in place. And once that appeals person is in place, then the chief can get a ticket.
Right, but that appeal person can act also on building code violations.
Right.
That's where
Right.
I was connecting the
That's
dots,
where
okay.
That's where the ticketing aspect.
Can we have a neighboring town act as that until we complete our training? Can we request a third-party consultant type role
I know
for that?
The chief is looking into it, I haven't heard anything further on it.
The way building permits work anywhere, when you pull a building permit, if you do work outside of the scope of that permit, the building department will order you to cease and desist until you reapply a permit to cover the work you're doing. That can be done there. There is clearly work done to that structure outside of the permit, visible from the exterior of the building without going inside. And I would also entertain that there must be, I'm sure on the state books, there will be a reason to do an inspection on a vacant building that's sat for 7 years and is a possible safety hazard. There has to be an avenue to go inside and look at the rest of it. But from the outside only, there are clear, major structural changes that are not permitted. So they should have a cease and desist until
We
that
can
permit's
write the
modified.
letter and send it with or without the appeal board. You just don't write a ticket for a sign and financial. But you can still state you are failing to comply with the building code and the permit regulations, the state,
Right. And
Right.
and say, we are officially telling you to stop.
I think that can happen, I just don't know if there's an active work going on, or if this is
It-
literally just, it's on the market and there's no additional
It doesn't
work.
matter, the structure has been modified outside of the permit.
Right.
But we
So-
can't enter a building without being invited.
We don't have to enter it, it's visible from the outside. You can send them a letter that the structure's clearly been modified beyond the scope of the permit that's taken out on it, and they need to modify the permit.
Well, I think that they can issue the cease and
If-
desist on it until they
If the
file
building
a permit.
inspector's driving down the road and they see someone replacing a roof on a house and they haven't applied for a permit, they don't have to get any special permission, they can see in plain view the violation, they act on that violation.
Agreed.
These violations of modifying the structure without a proper permit are in plain view. The house owner needs to be notified that they need to pull a permit and bring that house up to code. I understand the building aspect of this very well. This is what I do for a living. There are great powers that the
Without
building
certain
inspector
bylaws,
has. The
they don't
state
have to
has-
bring the building up to code if they're not living in it.
The state laws regulate the building. The
Certain
local-
laws, you're correct.
The local building code enforcers are trained to and evaluated and licensed by the Commonwealth. And the building code is produced by the Commonwealth. Towns can adopt additional things to that code, but they can't detract from the code. The state code exists, and that the structural work going on there is in violation. The code states that no one shall alter, demolition, or start any structural work without said permit. It's been started. That's a violation of the state code. It can be acted on, I assure you.
Right, but all you can do is tell them to stop working on it until they get a permit. But you
Right.
cannot force them to fix it.
Right, and then if
If
they.
nobody's living in it, I mean.
Right.
And,
I think
and,
that's
and
the-
that order needs to exist, so when they sell the house, any property owner, potential buyer is notified that there's an order on this house. Because right now, the way it looks, if someone is silly enough to buy it sight unseen because it looks like a good bargain, looking at the pictures they posted that are not of this house, they're gonna get stung.
I would make a motion that we have the building commissioner go to the building, identify the permit that is hanging,
In the front window.
look at our records, make sure that
Sorry.
historically the permit is accurate to the work requested and that the permit may not have reached a point where it expired based on mass law. I don't believe you can just have a permit forever without it either having to renew it or at least bring it to the building inspector's attention.
Correct. 2
Of your
years.
progress update.
Expires in 2 years, and it can be terminated at the commissioner's, inspector's discretion after 1 year with lack of activity. So the permit,
So
Can or
start there
shall
and
be
provide a
extended.
report to us. So pretty much review the permit, what the permit allowed the occupant to do, and do they believe the work that's being done is within the scope of the permit and does not create and then tell us whether it creates a safety hazard for others.
I am inclined to write the state inspector's
And I would
office
request that's
soon.
done by next week. It shouldn't take a week for them to be able to look this up and provide this information.
Okay, that was a motion?
Did we lose? I detailed it, but technically the motion is get the permit number, make sure it's valid, and give us
Mhm.
your recommendation of action.
Okay. May I have a second?
What's going on.
You second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion?
One last thing,
Okay.
is the difficulty in finding this permit because we just switched permit software?
Shouldn't be.
Okay,
Unless,
that's,
I say shouldn't be, unless it was prior to the previous software. Because
and if
the
that's the
previous
case, it should have
software, it was
expired just
not-
by,
Right. If it's not in the file,
How old is the previous software?
That was 2014. I think that was. when-
well, that's when, is that when we got Geo?
I
It was
think
the
we had a
one
lot of
before
people
that, I think.
Even before that.
Yeah, we had
This-
Black
this-
Bear
this
and
is
it
about
wasn't
two- it's about
able
2
to
years ago.
transfer to Geo when we
And
went
I
to
think
Geo.
Black Bear dates back to 94.
Yeah. So unless it's in the file from that time period up to like 2013, 14, like Andrew said.
but
It
even
would
if
have
it
to be
was
paper file.
2014.
It should be 15.
You either
Mhm.
have it, or if you don't, then the permit's been out there way too long and not closed up.
Right.
And they have every right to come back and say, come back to our office, tell us your plan, and submit for a new permit.
Right, and submit for a new permit to include fixing these structural issues, but my concern is bigger than this. The structural damage they've done to this house is quite severe. And in my opinion, it is not a salvageable property. There is no fixing what they've done without rebuilding the whole structure. They've tore off the very base foundation wall, the basement that sits on the foundation. They've removed it. And it's been sitting on pillars for a year and a half, and it's leaning backwards. There's no way you can just, push the house back 5 degrees frontwards and then build a new wall under to re-support it. And on top of that, the structural stuff, the guy loved to show off his work before he died. So I had an opportunity to see everything inside, and it's horrible.
Was most of this work done, from your opinion, from the previous owner? And
Yes.
the new owners are just trying to find a way to fix it, and it doesn't sound like they know how.
They went in there like they're gonna fix it up, realized how bad it was, and just stopped coming. They showed up once or twice and said, we're just gonna ditch it.
And I got no further discussion. Maybe it's exactly.
Mhm.
It's, we need to move towards getting rid of that property.
Yep. Okay, with that, I'll call further discussion. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Did board members have anything else they wish to report on, or?
Just wanted to ask this in relation to that. The fact that the property is up for sale, is there any interest from the board in pursuing that as town property?
I have ideas for it too, for that, but I don't know if it's something we'd ever get to, and I don't know when it's appropriate, but
I don't know the whole lot size.
given.
I'd need to know
I
a
don't
little
know
bit
if you
more
wanted to
detail, but
discuss that later, but I just wanted to throw that out there while we were discussing.
does the backyard go all the way back parallel, or does it just a
No.
little block in front of the fire station?
This would be,
It goes to
this would be
there,
the
like,
fire
5
station.
feet, 5 feet around it, that's it.
This would be the fire station. Literally, we have a parking area here. The garage of the house in here, basically the lot sits there. So we park some cars here, and part of the fire building is, we have the offices are that we just renovated with a day room, and the rest of the station is here.
So they've got that little square,
This little plot up
pretty
here.
much what the house is, okay, I
Right.
got you.
But, if the town wanted to try to acquire that, you could put a steel structure up here, move the trucks into here, demolition this, and build a fire station back in place there in the future. But that requires a little bit of research to see what it would cost, and that's what I'm saying, it's an idea I have. But, also there's the parking lot across the street, up just above Rice Park, that used to be the Ruggles, the school street, was the old schoolhouse. A fire station could be built there as well, and you could have drive-through in the fire station. Sooner or later, we're
Yeah,
gonna do
but
something.
between 62 and School Street.
Right, so to move that property, all it would do is give us better parking spaces for now, and not have that, literally, it's in the way. And the people come and they feel they have the right to park here, which they don't. They own so many feet out from the house, which is like right to the edge of their driveway, and their garage is set back a little bit, so there's a little room here. But they always love to park here in the way of the fire trucks. And there's no clear property line there for them to follow. It's never become an issue for trucks leaving, but it could be.
I'm definitely interested. I think there'd be some more questions to know what it would take to get rid of the building if we didn't want the building. So I wouldn't necessarily just want to jump on it, but I'm definitely interested in learning more about
What
it.
I've been told by people that saw the advertisement for it, and I haven't looked at it personally, they're trying to sell it for $40,000, but they admit they paid $15,000 for it. It's a lot with water sewer tie-in. It's got some value to it. Certainly more than $15,000, but the structure would have to be torn down. That would be an expense. If it was possible to acquire the property at what they paid for it, we could tear it down and have the space, and if we wanted to put something there, and quite frankly, the potential to put the ambulance there in the future, because the ambulance, where they're gonna go, there's no sleeping quarters for these guys. We're running a 24-hour shifts, and there's no sleeping quarters. There's a day room that's a quarter the size of this room, with the 2-person couch and a table. It's not a proper sleeping quarters. It's probably not sleeping quarters that would meet the standards required by NFPA and
Okay. Kathy?
Anybody?
There's no sleeping quarters at the new building?
No.
Is that what there is not?
No. They have a refrigerator, a stove, a table that's probably the size of the table behind you, and a two-person couch and a TV, and the room is less than a quarter the size of this room. That's all they have for ambulance. Then they have an ambulance bay. The problem isn't, I mean, we have room to put one truck there, not two, so we can get an ambulance in there. We can't run both. One's still gonna have to stay at the station or somewhere else. But this would be a great opportunity to put a small structure up for two ambulances and give them a small sleeping quarter. Because right now, they're still in the fire station, and that back section at least is separated, and the chairs that are in there fully reclined so they can sleep, and I think there's actually a fold-out in there, so they can actually sleep in their 24-hour shift. But you can't expect someone to be awake in 24 hours in a shift. That's not how it works. And there's absolutely, and I've asked Bob, what are you gonna do about it? He says, I don't know, they're probably gonna have to keep a truck here and sleep here still. It's really, it's, you know, it was an afterthought to put it in there, I think, to keep it as a public service building instead of a police station, to keep with the grant. It had to be a public service, so they've got an ambulance bay, and it met that standard to build the structure. But it's not a useful facility for the ambulance. The ambulance is gonna need another home, in my opinion. You can certainly ask the chief that and see what he says, but, that would be another great possibility. And this is thinking out loud here. You know, you could do a small building there easily, and it would fit at least, you could still leave an ambulance over at the new building, have the second ambulance here, and when they're on their overnight portion of the shift, they can be running out of that building to the sleeping quarters. And if we have a second call, they just report to the other station for the second truck, whichever we make the first or second truck. It doesn't.
So you get a lot more investigation look into it.
Right, but for, you know, depending what happens to that structure, it's
Is it something that we?
cheap enough right now,
Yeah.
and
There's also a master law on how we can, you know, actually acquire property, and I don't think that we could actually just go in and put a bid in for it. We'd have to do a RFP and have them basically bid a cost on it, so, or take
Mhm.
it by eminent domain, so.
if the
Still a
building
market
is,
review of
Right.
value.
And it could be, you know, what the value that they come up with as a fair market value might be more than what they're asking. So, it's just
And
something we have to consider along the way, but.
I seem to recall the city of Haverhill, when they lived there, would condemn a building, and if people didn't pull a permit to bring the building up to code, they would order it torn down. And if they didn't do it, the city would tear it down. And if you didn't reimburse the city, they would take that for a lien on it and own the property. Lengthy process, but, you know.
Worcester will do the same if it gets to that much of an abandoned building where someone just
7 years.
refuses to sell it, but
Empty
also
long time.
refuses to find a way to invest it, and
Yeah.
or they refuse to recognize they can't maintain what they own. It can happen.
Yeah.
Been
It's
there.
putting the
It's already
capital
been there a
to do
long
it.
time.
Yeah.
It's just getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
The other thing I would suggest, though, is, separate from this, but in general, we may want to look at a bylaw that speaks to our expectations of condemned
Maintain.
buildings or buildings that can't be occupied due to the structure, and how they need to be labeled and noted, whether they need to be boarded up at least 10 feet from the ground, things like that, so that
And in a duration, they can remain that way. before
Worcester wrote a
something
very
else gets-
heavy one after the fire.
Right. And
Because
this
of
is-
that, not knowing if someone's in a building, they pretty much said every owner should know if someone's in the building. In order to make sure that's the case, you would have to board it up, lock it up, make it impossible for someone to get in without, so we never have to run into a burning, unoccupied building thinking someone might be in there. So it might be something we need to consider if there's something we need to adopt it. This is a little different. It's not the city, so I mean, we gotta be careful how we word it is all I'm saying. So
The
we gotta
fire
think
we-
about it.
The fire we had on, I think it was Kendall Street, last year, Kendall and James, I believe it was Kendall, was exactly
The old
that.
Black Tavern, right?
It had been an abandoned building for years, years and years and years, and somebody was just squatting in there.
So that's what I mean. So we gotta look at that further down the line, but it might be worth.
Mhm.
And that's the structure, we did have a partial collapse with people inside on that building. Nobody was hurt, but potential's there even in our small town.
Okay. Do board members have anything else they wish to bring up tonight, or?
I don't tonight.
Okay, I guess the administrators report, you,
The other things there, I gave you guys a draft charge for the 250th anniversary committee. And we'll go through that, we do that as a agenda item at the next meeting, but please want you guys to just do that.
okay.
State's looking at the drawings that were done for Route 62. Once we get the Chapter 84 approval, we'll put it out to bid. Jason's working on getting some preliminary price quotes on it to know whether or not it's gonna be over $50,000 for the work. Because that'll determine what type of procurement process we have to go through.
Okay.
So once he gets that and we get the approval from the state, then we'll go out to bid on that. Hopefully that'll be a quick turnaround.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yep.
Chapter 84, is that just what describes how the engineering and construction is done on bridges?
Yes, that is.
Nothing to do with funding?
Nothing at all.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I
Chapter
understood it
90
right.
is the funding aspect of it, irregardless. So that's the pool of money it's gonna come
What about our previous bridge repair
from.
articles?
$34,000 worth, and Jason's looking how we can apply that.
Okay,
So,
thank you, I was
Yeah.
just curious.
Okay, and we do have the tax rate.
yep, tax
Set.
rate's been set at $18.80 per thousand for the valuation, so that's been certified by the state. Public safety building, the fiber installation is officially hardwired into the building. They have to come back and install basically the switch port. Once they do that, then it's just hooking up the cameras and the doors for the security system. And from that point, I talked to the chief, he said, once everything is online, for those two, it'll take about kind of 2 weeks to move everything from here to there for operations to officially commence. Once they're out, we're gonna take stock of what they have left behind and work on probably repainting that area and repurposing it for the tax collector and treasurer's offices. That is how we're moving forward on that. We're surveying the area. We're still trying to kind of come up with a game plan for the far side over here. Ideally, we'd like to bring the town clerk up from the basement, but there's a lot more that needs to be done over there to really make it a habitable space for an office, because there's a lot of temporary walls that really divide the space up. So if it's gonna be done at it's gonna be a pretty good investment to do that work. But we might also be able to utilize that to, redo the space, move the tax collector over, and then redo this space over here to make it even more functional. So we really have to kind of make a better game plan on that. But just given what we have for resources, we should be able to easily make the transition from them back from upstairs to downstairs.
Okay.
Okay, I just think it's important to point out that the tax rate being set on time is really critical to the overall management of the town. It should, it's important to point out that this is the best way to have it done on time, so we don't have estimated tax bills. Cuts down on borrowing, it cuts down on, a lot of cost, and it's reflective on everybody that worked to get it set, done on time.
And this also helps that now I'm really able to hit the budgeting process of next year hard, because now I have more firm numbers for estimated revenues as far as what our tax levy is going to be.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much what 90% of my day today was trying to get the best preliminary numbers as possible for expenses with the revenues in, so that way I know what side of positive we're on.
Right.
Gotcha.
And then kind of the next step would be making the hard decisions on, what you do with requests. So I think we're definitely headed on the right track. So.
Yes.
The last thing I had, it wasn't on here, but late in the day on Thursday, I got the the coded new town website back to me. So I've been spending the weekend kind of going through, identifying some things that I still have to kind of just change up a little bit on the back end. I sent it out to all the department heads to try to identify stuff on their own pages that still needs to be changed. Next Tuesday, I've scheduled a training for everybody on it with the people who designed the site, so they'll be doing a webinar for that. And then I'm hoping on that next Thursday, we'll officially launch. So
Great,
that's a good
thank
plan.
you.
Okay. That is it, right? With that, I've come to the end. Does anybody have anything they wish to bring up? Hearing none, I'll look for the appropriate motion.
Move to adjourn.
I second that.
One thing we did forget, but we can do it at the next January.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
holiday.